This is your 28storms.com cyclone update for Wednesday, the 23rd of November. All remains quiet near Australia, and as we go into the southern Pacific, we do see that there is some convection just to the northwest of Fiji, but if we switch over to the water vapor animation, it still does not appear that upper level conditions will be supportive of any tropical development in this region anytime soon due to the presence of troughing over much of the area to the west and toward the south. Meanwhile, we have a different picture altogether in the Indian Ocean as the enhancing phase of the Madden-Julian Oscillation is beginning to work its way eastward into the Indian Ocean, and the latest forecasts from the GFS ensembles show the MJO strengthening as it goes deeper into phase 2, and this is a good indication that convection will be well above normal in this region over the next 7 days, and that will increase the potential for tropical development. And we've been talking about these two features for quite some time already, but the latest update from the U.S. Joint Typhoon Warning Center is now giving a broad low to the east-southeast of Sri Lanka, a low chance of development into a tropical cyclone within the next 24 hours, and the disturbance located toward the east-northeast of Madagascar is now being given a medium chance of development within the next day or so. The latest precipitable water animation of the Indian Ocean shows the system toward the northeast of Madagascar quite well. We still see low-level convergence, so there is some potential for development there, and we are beginning to see a similar setup over the lower half of the Bay of Bengal. Toward the very end of the animation, we are seeing increasing convergence just to the southeast of Sri Lanka. The latest enhanced infrared animation of the Indian Ocean shows that we still don't have much in the way of organization to the southeast of Sri Lanka, so any development in this region is going to take probably at least another 48 hours. And toward the south in the southern hemisphere, our disturbance is showing signs of organization, but as I will show you in just a moment, the center is actually displaced well to the northwest of all of this convection that you see here on the satellite, so development in that area will also likely be somewhat slow to occur due to only marginally favorable conditions aloft. And the good news about that system is that even if it does develop, it looks as though the steering currents are so weak that it may not pose much of a risk to Madagascar, especially within the next 3 to 4 days. The latest water vapor shows that we have continuous troughiness over much of Madagascar, and that is helping to usher in a lot of west-northwest wind shear. And you can see the shear as denoted by the streamlines on this graphic, and you can see the intensity of the shear a little bit better on this map. Again, some of the darker yellow and red colors are unfavorable areas of vertical winds, and those are in excess of about 30 to 40 knots. But we have a slightly different story here developing in the Bay of Bengal, where we have a little bit more in the way of upper level divergence or ridging, and you can see it trying to set up just to the southeast of Sri Lanka. Before we go into greater detail regarding the system closer towards Sri Lanka, this is just a quick ASCAT satellite pass of the disturbance in the southern hemisphere, and this shows what is happening quite well. Again, we have a lot of west-northwest wind shear, and that is pushing all of the main convective activity associated with this disturbance to the southeast of the center. And if you look really closely, the center is actually located in this general area. I know it's somewhat hard to make out because the microwave satellite did not capture the full extent of the disturbance, but you can easily tell that the center is displaced to the northwest of the convection. So, as we look ahead into the northern Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, and Arabian Sea, this is the GFS forecast, but we're going to start at the 0 hour, and this is the latest mid-level analysis. We see that mid-level ridging is dominating much of India, with the main trough located well to the west over Iran and Iraq. But as we go into 24 and 48 hours, we begin to see increasing vorticity near the southern tip of India and just to the southwest of Sri Lanka, and this ridge is beginning to prograde more toward the east as the trough over the Middle East continues to amplify. And as we advance this more into 72 and 96 hours, this trough is continuing to dig closer to the Arabian Sea, and that will more than likely steer our developing tropical cyclone more toward the north up the west coast of India. However, I should warn you that there is some model disagreement among the GFS and the ECMWF. The ECMWF model solution is not amplifying this trough quite as much as what is being indicated here. The trough is a little bit back toward the northwest, and if that were to happen, this ridge is going to remain in place, and then the storm would begin or continue moving more toward the northwest and eventually away from India. So there's a lot of model disagreement beyond day 4 and day 5, but the one thing that does look fairly certain is that Sri Lanka and much of southern India will be experiencing elevated rainfall chances, and there is still a decent chance that we could get a minimal tropical cyclone out of this system. As additional proof that the GFS is developing this area of low pressure into a minimal tropical cyclone, we will take a quick look at the surface wind forecast, and as we advance this into about 48 to 72 hours, we can see that the area of low pressure is developing maximum sustained winds near the surface in excess of about 30 to 40 knots. So this is definitely indicative of a minimal tropical cyclone, and the GFS is forecasting the system to maintain those winds as the area of low pressure parallels the west coast of India. Again, the only thing that I should caution you of is that the European model, after it shows the system making landfall over southern India, continues to take the circulation a little bit more toward the northwest and away from the coast. That would certainly be some good news, but we should still be prepared along the west coast in the event that this particular model solution were to verify. And really quickly, this is the latest ECMWF forecast. Here is the southern coast of India. This is the developing area of low pressure just to the southeast of Sri Lanka. As we go into 48 and 72 hours, there is really not that much in the way of any disagreement between the GFS and ECMWF at this time. The low pressure center is roughly in the same spot, and it should also be noted that the system in the southern hemisphere is not forecast to do all that much. It's really not going to move due to the lack of any type of dominant steering currents, and it's more than likely going to remain generally weak due to the wind shear in place, especially over Madagascar. And as we continue to advance this into the medium range, that is when we begin to see some of the model disagreement with regard to the system near India. Again, the European model shows a little bit more of a westerly track by this time, but again, this is really far out, and it's really hard to say exactly which scenario is more likely to happen just yet. So the South Pacific and waters adjacent to Australia continue to be quiet, tropical cyclone speaking, and the system in the southern hemisphere near Madagascar is unlikely to do anything overly significant. Little in the way of any change is forecast with regard to that area of low pressure, and the big story continues to be near Sri Lanka, where that area has the best chance of witnessing a minimal tropical cyclone formation with heavy rain possible across Sri Lanka and southern India, and beyond that point we'll just have to wait and see. So thanks again for visiting 28storms.com. We will have another cyclone update for you here at 28storms.com/cyclone by tomorrow afternoon.